Hi everyone, welcome to the April 2024 edition of Archaeology News, where I take you on a journey through time exploring the latest exciting archaeological discoveries from around the world. As an archaeologist, I have taken my years of experience and used it to spend hours carefully researching stories for each of these videos so that you can have well-sourced and interesting, accurate news about real archaeology, not clickbait or sensationalism. Have we found the villa where the first emperor of Rome died? Did Australian Aboriginals produce their own pottery before Western colonists arrived? Who won the debate on the Joe Rogan Experience between archaeologist Flint Dibble and author Graham Hancock? Stay tuned to find out as I delve into the past, bringing you in-depth analyses and captivating stories. Okay, let's dig in. We have 7 stories today in our Top Discoveries segment, which I will cover in chronological order, starting from those going farthest back in time and working my way up. We start our journey today in the Shanxi province of northern China. There, in the Dahaku Cemetery, state archaeologists have unearthed a tomb belonging to a noblewoman and containing 430 burial objects, which date back around 3,000 years to the Western Zhou dynasty, which reigned from around 1046 to 771 BCE. The tomb is of a middling size, and in addition to the burial, contains a pit which holds the remains of a sacrificed animal. Its human occupant is a female between 31 and 34 years of age that was likely a middle-ranking noblewoman. The 430 burial objects have been categorized into 93 groups and include bronze wares, pottery, jade artifacts, and shellfish containers. Within the wider cemetery are over 600 burials, 20 chariot and horse pits, and bronze inscriptions, which have been found to shed light on the existence of a previously historically undocumented state. The inscriptions indicate that the state clan name was Ba, and Ba Bo, aka the Earl of Ba, was its paramount ruler. Given that most of the province at this time was under the Jin state control, this site is now very valuable for research on the feudal states in this region during the Western Zhou period and their interactions with the Jin state. Our second discovery this month brings us to the coast of Croatia, where excavations in the town of Zakatorak have come across a beautifully preserved 2,500-year-old Greek-Illyrian helmet. Interestingly, the same team had already found another helmet in 2020 around 10 meters away at the same site. Both of these helmets are actually of different types and dates. The helmet discovered in 2020 was of a type commonly used in Greece and Illyria in the 4th century BCE. It was an open-faced helmet with a rectangular cross-section for the face with decorative edges. It likely belonged to a member of the warrior elite, as it was buried in a grave with pieces of iron weapons. The new helmet is thought to date from the 6th century BCE and is an extremely rare type. And instead of being part of a warrior burial, it's thought that it actually might have been part of a votive deposit because it was found in a dry, stone-walled addition to a grave. This is the first time that 2 different Greek-Illyrian helmets have been found at one site. And these helmets, along with a wealth of clothing, jewelry, and burial artifacts found since the excavations began, greatly expands our knowledge of the funeral practices of Illyrian communities in the latter half of the 1st millennium BCE. You can watch a short video of the helmet being excavated and removed from its context to be studied in a museum via the video link in the description of this video. Our next discovery takes us to Australia, where the finding of the oldest pottery in Australia has challenged colonialist stereotypes. The 82 pieces of pottery are between 2,000 and 3,000 years old and were found on the Lizard Island group, which is located off the far north Queensland coast. Archaeologists excavated a 2.4 meter deep midden, aka fancy archaeological speak for dumps or trash heaps, over 2 years and discovered lots of evidence of occupation, including the remains of shellfish and fish collected and eaten by the people on the island. Less than a meter below the surface, they found dozens of pottery sherds, which are the earliest securely dated, locally produced pottery found in Australia, and they predate the arrival of Europeans. This overturns the long-held belief that the first Australians did not produce ceramics and did not have the maritime technology to produce ceramics for long periods. It also reveals that Aboriginal communities in North Queensland potentially had connections with pottery-making communities of New Guinea. Our next two features bring us to Italy and the area around Mount Vesuvius. The first is the news that after decades of work, archaeologists believe they have found the villa where Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, died. According to Roman sources, Augustus died in 14 CE in a villa to the north of the volcano. However, the building's location has never been verified or found. Since 2002, researchers from the University of Tokyo have been exploring Somma Vesuviana, an archaeological site north of Mount Vesuvius, and they now think that this could be the site of Augustus's lost villa. The ruins in question actually include two separate villas, one buried in the 79 CE eruption that famously took out Pompeii and Herculaneum, and then there's another villa that was later built on top of it. Until recently, researchers had only been aware of the newer structure. In the older villa, the team has identified 4 rooms containing portions of wall, roof tiles, and other ruins. In one chamber were 16 amphorae. In another, they found large amounts of charcoal and ash from a fire they think was used to heat water for a private bathhouse, which they say indicates that the villa belonged to a person of great wealth and influence. The team also say that the bath went out of use around the same time as when Augustus died, and what appeared to be a large temple was later constructed on the site. Historians previously thought that the damage from the 79 CE eruption at this site was minor in comparison to the southeast of the mountain. But these older villas' ruins suggest that there was a destructive impact in this area. The researchers think that based on the presence of the bathhouse and the later temple that was built over top of the villa, that this might be the site of Augustus's villa. And they want to expand the scale of their digs with the hope that further exploration could reveal another Pompeii. Right now, the evidence that the villa belonged to Augustus seems, to me at least, to be a bit speculative or hopeful. However, that doesn't mean that as work continues, more concrete evidence won't be found in future. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on this project to see what they find next. Now we move to nearby Herculaneum, where new technology deciphering the carbonized collection of papyrus scrolls that was found here has revealed the exact location of the philosopher Plato's burial place, which up until now had been unknown. This new deciphering also sheds light on his last few hours of his life. While the scrolls were discovered in the 18th century, reading them has been historically difficult and carries the risk of destroying them due to their carbonized state. However, thanks to new innovative techniques, including optical coherence tomography and infrared hyperspectral imaging, these ancient texts, once thought to be lost forever, are now being revealed. This newly analyzed text is The History of the Academy by Philodemus of Gadara, an Epicurean philosopher and poet who lived in Herculaneum. It states that the burial place of Plato was in a garden reserved for him in a private area of the Platonic Academy, which is located near the sacred shrine to the Muses in Athens. It also revealed that Plato was sold as a slave on the island of Aegina in 404 BCE, when the Spartans conquered the island, or it might have happened in 399 BCE, immediately after the death of Socrates. Until now, it had been believed that the great philosopher had been sold into slavery in 387 BCE during his time in Sicily at the court of Dionysius I of Syracusa. The text also speaks of Plato's last night, relating that he was running a high fever and was bothered by the music being played for him by a Thracian woman, commenting that it had a scant sense of rhythm. Harsh. The Platonic Academy was destroyed by the Roman dictator Sulla in 86 BCE and was rediscovered in the 20th century in the modern Academia Platonos neighborhood of Athens. Considerable excavation has been carried out there, and visiting the site itself is free, although I was not able to find anything about whether or not they were able to locate any gardens or burials within that excavation. Certainly, I wouldn't be surprised if they go back there to try and find it now. Our next story brings us to the Indian state of Haryana, where 3 bronze idols thought to be around 400 years old have been found. The idols depict the Hindu deities Vishnu and Mata Lakshmi. The size of the standing Lord Vishnu idol is around 45 centimeters tall. The smaller Lakshmi idol is seated. Both have intricate carvings and designs. The third idol depicts Vishnu and Lakshmi sitting together. A police statement has said that the artifacts were found during the excavations for a new house foundation, and construction work was underway using a JCB. The plot owner initially made an effort to hide the discovery and even offered money to the JCB driver in exchange for keeping the details secret. However, after 2 days, the driver notified the police and they sent a team to the location. The idols were taken under protection and construction work was ordered to halt. The State Archaeology Department will now start excavating to see if there are other idols nearby and have sent the 3 that are found so far to be studied in their laboratory, after which they will be kept in a museum. Our last discovery for this month comes from the state of Virginia in the United States, where 2 glass bottles filled with centuries-old cherries were found hidden inside George Washington's historic home at Mount Vernon. This discovery was made during ongoing excavations as part of a major revitalization of the mansion. The bottles, which look like they were made in the 1740s or 50s, were found buried beneath a brick floor that was laid in the 1770s. To help preserve the roughly 250-year-old bottles, the contents were decanted into smaller vessels for future analysis and consisted of cherries, pits, stems, and a gooey residue. Appetizing. Researchers think that an amber-colored liquid that could be groundwater seeped into the bottles as their corks deteriorated over time, and they think that the cherries were probably harvested at Mount Vernon in the 1770s, possibly before the Revolutionary War, and then hidden away for future consumption. During colonial times, there was a popular drink known as cherry bounce, which was made with brandy, spices, sugar, and cherry juice. Both Washington and his wife Martha were known to be fans. However, it was typically stored in larger vessels, so it's been concluded that it's likely that the newly discovered fruits were being preserved for other uses, such as cooking or baking. It should be noted that the cherries weren't picked by Washington himself, but rather by some of the hundreds of enslaved people that were living at Mount Vernon at the time. This isn't the first time similar vessels containing aged cherries and other fruits have been found in Virginia. In 1966, bottles were unearthed in Williamsburg, and in 1981, some were found at Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's estate. That's it for our top discoveries. Which one was your favorite? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this part, don't forget to like the video. Now we're going to move on to current news and events. First up is news from Istanbul that the 500-year-old Zeyrek Çinili Hammam, one of the most important examples of Ottoman bath architecture, is returning to its original function after a 13-year restoration. Built between 1540 and 1546, it is one of the earliest known baths designed by the artist Mimar Sinan. The name Çinili means covered with tiles and comes from the magnificent Iznik tiles that were exclusively produced for the hammam in the 16th century and once covered the entire interior up to a certain level. No hammams of the time have had such a rich and varied tile decoration. The facility will have the traditional segregated bathing areas for men and women and plans to open its doors on May 3rd. It also contains a small museum and art installations. Prices for treatments range from 60 to 220 euros. Having gone on a Turkish bath on my trip to Istanbul last year, it is definitely an experience that I recommend. You will never feel more clean in your entire life. Next is the announcement that the Greek Culture Ministry is planning to allow personalized visits, aka private tours, to the Athenian Acropolis, priced at an eye-watering 5,000 euros. The site is Greece's biggest attraction, drawing more than 22,000 visitors a day last summer, which has forced authorities to introduce tough controls, including a time slot system to access the site. This new scheme proposed goes a step further, allowing groups of 4 to 5 people to beat the crowds and experience the Periclean masterpiece on an exclusive basis, guided by expert archaeologists around the site between 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., before and after the public closing times. This allows them to avoid thousands of selfie snappers who hourly ascend the rocky hill. The ministry says that they've had requests from tour operators for this for a very long time. Previously, only world leaders, royalty, and the odd celebrity have been granted access to the site out of opening hours. However, the measure, which is part of an overhaul of ticketing policy at more than 350 archaeological sites and museums in Greece, has triggered a negative backlash. Guides have described it as impractical, and critics argue that it runs counter to the spirit of everything the world's preeminent symbol of democracy is supposed to represent. Despina Kutsumba, the vice president of the country's Archaeologists Association, said, "The next thing you know, people will be making marriage proposals and drinking champagne up there. They'll feel entitled, if they've spent that sort of money, to do whatever they want at the site." Adding that she felt that the idea was unacceptably exclusive. Others argue that the revenue generated by the tours will be fed back into cash-starved cultural projects. What do you think? Would you pay for a private tour? Let me know in the comments. That's the end of current news and events. We'll close our program today talking about archaeology and entertainment and pop culture. Our single entertainment story for this month is one I'm hoping you've already heard of. On April 18th, the Joe Rogan Experience premiered a 4.5-hour-long podcast episode featuring a debate between archaeologist Flint Dibble and author Graham Hancock, each presenting their arguments for and against the idea of a mysterious worldwide ancient civilization from around 10,000 years ago that was destroyed but somehow had enough survivors to then travel the world and spread various technology that led to the rise of the Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and Mesoamerican civilizations. Due to the length of the podcast, I've really not had a chance to check it out yet, but it's definitely on my list. I've read a few summaries and looked at some online forums where it seems like, to me at least, people feel that Flint presented good, clear, and understandable evidence on why this mysterious civilization does not exist, while Graham Hancock focused more on being defensive and could not, when asked directly and point blank by Joe, provide actual evidence to back up his claims. The episode is available to watch on YouTube, which I would suggest as your preferred medium because both presenters used PowerPoints and images for their arguments. The episode has been viewed over 4 million times since its release, and certainly has been the most mainstream attention real archaeology has gotten in a while. Flint wrote a follow-up article for the Guardian newspaper about why he decided to participate, as well as releasing a further video on his YouTube channel about why these theories don't hold evidential or scientific weight. I will also say that I was very pleased to have a shout out and be included in his presentation as one of the channels on YouTube creating good archaeological content. Thank you so much for the shout out, Flint. You can find links to the podcast, Flint's video, and the article he wrote in the description of this video. All right, everyone, time to pack up our finds and hang up our shovels for today. That's everything for this month's edition of Archaeology News. Which discovery was your favorite? Will you be watching the debate between Flint and Graham? Have you done it already? What are your thoughts? Don't forget to comment, like the video, or subscribe to the channel before you leave. If you're feeling extra generous, you can give me a super thanks or go to my Ko-fi page and support me with a small donation. Taking a few seconds to support me in any way you can helps the channel grow so that I can continue to provide you with quality heritage content that you can trust is well-sourced, researched, and presented by someone who is an expert in this subject. Thank you so much for watching. Stay curious, and I hope to see you on my next adventure into the world of archaeology.